All right. Welcome back. It is Tuesday at 12 o'clock. So you know what that means. We are here with Planning with a Purpose. How you doing today, Muffy?
I am all right. I am all right. It's the beginning of the week, so I don't have nothing to complain about yet, but I'm sure I'll find something by tomorrow.
Hope you had a I hope you had a resting weekend.
I
Long
did. I did
weekend.
have a restful weekend. I will say that. I got lots of rest this weekend.
Good. I love that. So, as you all know, we are here with Planning with a Purpose podcast, or we are a weekly live stream that is hosted by myself and community builder Muffy Mendoza. We will be here every Tuesday at 12 p.m., bringing together city leaders, everyday residents, thought partners to the table to break down the city of Pittsburgh's comprehensive plan. Yes, that is right. The city of Pittsburgh is embarking on a comprehensive plan right now, and we are in the throes of engagement. So we are here to talk about stories, share stories from across communities, and highlight why inclusive planning matters for the future. You can cast this stream on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and each episode will have invite listeners to learn, to engage, and imagine a sustainable, thriving Pittsburgh one conversation at a time. And that's all we're here for, to have one conversation at a time. And today, we're just going to have a real talk on planning, what it's like to build the city's future while living our own lives as Black women, community advocates, and planners. I know when we first started this stream, the first stream came out hot and heavy, just letting you know we're here. The second stream, we walked you through a survey. But Muffy and I thought we should just have a vulnerable conversation of what it means to plan.
Mhm.
Why does it feel so large and robust and daunting and all the time and everywhere all at once? So does that sound good to you, Muffy?
It sounds good. I think this is the perfect way to kind of like, we just finished, well, we're finishing up, we're in the midst this week of finishing up the summer of engagement. So I think this is a great time for us just to talk about what we've seen, what we've experienced, because we're basically halfway through the comprehensive planning process. So this is a perfect time for y'all to really, get our perspective and understanding of it so that we can get even more people engaged in the second half of the comprehensive planning process.
Absolutely. So why does this conversation matter, you think, Muffy?
Mm. I think it matters because I think people should understand that, especially when it comes to the community engagement piece, like we are people who live, work, and play in Pittsburgh. And so we're not immune to all of the experiences that folks are having in the region. Like my home is in Sheridan, PA. I mean, the Sheridan section of Pittsburgh. I'm affected by all of the things that we're experiencing in Sheridan, from poverty, from what I would consider to be a broken political system of leaders in Sheridan, from, the environmental issues that Sheridan has being so close to Neville Island. Like these are all issues that are affecting me on a day-to-day basis. So the comprehensive planning process is not just a process I work for, it is a process I live through every day, whether it's me or my children or my family members. And as a native Pittsburgher, regardless of whether I'm living in the region or not, this is my generation, this is my family, this is my hometown, and it's very near and dear to my heart. And so I think that, this conversation is important because people need to understand that when we're going through this comprehensive planning process, this isn't just about you as an individual. This is about your livelihood and the people affected by your livelihood. This is about the family members that live next door to you or across the river or across the bridge. This is about the United States of America and how it chooses to see itself and identify itself on a day-to-day basis in terms of how we interact with our neighbors and how we choose to utilize our energy within our community. So for me, we have to have eye level conversations about these types of things, or else we are presenting what I would say is a not authentic perspective on comprehensive planning.
Hmm. I feel like that was such an awesome, robust response. And I feel like, in addition to that, it's just, cities need plannings to operate, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
That we need vision, we need goals, we need values. And I think Pittsburgh has created so many authentic values that they want to be true. They do want to be the most affordable city. I think that's a great value to uphold.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
A nation that we see, eggs $5 and rent and mortgage and everything is increasing. Like, I would love for Pittsburgh to aspire to be the most affordable city for all, because we know the
Right.
smoke and we know the issues that we have there. I would love to see Pittsburgh be another industrial titan. I think it's great to uphold the identity of being leaders. They were leaders in the steel industry. That means we have the grit, we have the zeal, the fervor, the energy, the knowledge, the people to be leaders, industrial leaders on a national and a worldwide stage.
Mm-hmm.
How can we continue to uphold those values as well? And then I do think that there is just a lovable camaraderie about Pittsburgh from, I'm originally from the Bronx, New York City. So New York has 2 football teams, 2 basketball teams, 2 hockey teams for all intents and purposes. And the solidarity and the unity around the Steelers, the Pirates, our Penguins, I do think there is something to hold on there that can really create this unification of community across the city. And so I think there's so many beautiful things that Pittsburgh can drill down on that doesn't change if we get a new mayor, that doesn't change if we get a new president, that doesn't change if the tides of politics change, but that we can really drill down on and really say, we are affordable. This is an open city for all. We want you to come here and invest in us, and we will also hold space for who you are. And I think Pittsburgh can do all of those things. I do think we just have to step into the future a little bit. And
Right.
so
I agree.
what planning is about.
Right. And don't you also think it's like sometimes, because we'll always say PGH 2050 comprehensive plan, but I think sometimes the word comprehensive gets lost and what that actually means to be comprehensive and the whole idea of just for all people. Right. And so I think that for the most part, people do want to see something be just for all people. But I think we forget that in order for something to be just for all people, it has to be comprehensive, meaning it has to include all of the parts. Like we can't keep operating as Pittsburghs in part in every single way. There's something to be said for this word we throw around all the time, siloed. And I think what's happening in Pittsburgh on a greater scale, and I've said this several times on social media, is like Pittsburgh hasn't realized that as you silo people, you also silo souls. Like you silo people's ability to live out the best parts of them within that society. And I think because Pittsburgh has not always been just for everybody, that is one of the reasons why it has such a hard time reaching this goal of being like the most affordable place, a place where industries thrive, a place where small businesses thrive, because it has the potential to do that. But when you are siphoning or not making it able for people to live out the best versions of themselves, you are then also enabling the city as a whole from moving forward. And I think that's why there's such a heavy emphasis on the 2050 plan being a comprehensive goal growth focused plan, because we need to give people the opportunity to grow. And, as somebody who has boomeranged in and out of Pittsburgh my whole life, that is one of the things that I've noticed is that the boomerang is what has enabled me to grow, not the consistent presence in Pittsburgh. And I would love for that to change. I would love to see people be able to, whether they're boomeranging into Pittsburgh or they have lived there the whole lives, be able to grow regardless at a rate that works for their soul, for their individual soul. And I think that's what we're missing. And that's why planning is important, because you have to have a vision that works comprehensively for everybody. And if it doesn't, trust me, if your neighbor can't grow, trust me, that's going to affect you. Absolutely. You may not think so in the short term, but in the long term, that has effects on your children, on your community, on your environment. So, yeah.
So that's making me think about, how do we plan for 25 years when the next 25 days feels unstable? And so, I just lost a really good thought, but I do think you're making me think about how do we plan for the future. So for example, yes, the silos of Pittsburgh, they probably worked back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
Hazelwood has a plant, and Clareton has a plant, and the Mon Valley has a couple of plants, and all of these neighborhoods, as we all know, had vibrant housing, booming business districts, central business districts. We can see the remnants of all of those things existing. And so we know that at one point in time, the neighborhoods of Pittsburgh were effective just the way that they existed, and they were self-sustaining. But I wonder if someone planned for 25 years and said, well, still is not going to be the industry of the future. So how do we start to make sure Homewood and Larmer and East Liberty are kind of coming together? How do we kind of start to make sure that these neighborhoods don't reap the effects of what was once effective that is no longer effective? I wonder if we have the conversation says, well, what happens after steel collapses?
Right. And do we have to think, here's what we may, I think we must embark upon this line of questioning, because folks were so busy planning for a McCandless, they didn't plan for a Homewood, Larmer, Lincoln area, even though those areas are prime real estate, right? Even though those areas are less likely to get flooding than some of these areas that are, just outside of city limits. So I think I think a part of the comprehensive planning process is confronting these very real, inequalities that have happened on purpose. Like this is called the planning with purpose. So we have to then look at the purposes of the past. And in many instances, when it comes to Pittsburgh, there was a very clearly, there was a very clear line of thought in terms of what would be invested in and what it wouldn't be invested in. And like you said, we have plans. Like Pittsburgh is known for research and planning. We do that in spades. But oftentimes these plans have not been integrated in ways that were equal. It's different for a Hazelwood to do a plan versus Oakland to do a plan. And the amount of investment, the time, even the integrity within the plan is just different. And so I think what we're attempting to do with this Pittsburgh 2050 plan is we are attempting to ensure that, every plan gets equal footing, because that was a part of what we did at the very beginning, was to look at all these plans and say, these are the issues that were most present. And these are the issues that may have been ignored, but were absolutely important. And so I think, in addition to ensuring that we're not siloing, the plans, it's also important for us to repair past harms. It's important for us to really look at, why was it that these things weren't prioritized when we knew about them? Because if there's a plan, then we knew. If there's an individual plan in that community, then we knew about it, and we just chose not to. Those things were not chosen for investment. So this is our opportunity to highlight that again, and to not just highlight it as, oh, this is good for the Hill District, but this is the way in which this is good for all of us. Because
I love that you said that, because to me, I'm a visual learner. To me, the city's plan feels like a blanket. Like it feels like security. Like, so we heard you, we put it in this plan to think about the future. And I think there are communities like the Hill District. There are communities like Homewood who have done cluster planning and neighborhood planning, and Hazelwood that have done planning, who can overlay that over this beautiful foundation that the city is planning to set, right? That's based on perspective and feedback. And so I think there are two questions that I'm curious in there, as someone who you didn't just say the West End of Pittsburgh, you said Sheridan, okay? And a lot of people, you don't just say the North Side, you say Manchester, okay?
Right.
I don't even know if Manchester is in the North Side because it operates so much on its own. It might just need to just be renamed Manchester, right?
Right.
You don't just clump everything in together. So how does identity sometimes make the work harder or more impactful.
Mhm.
I've been trying to really look at the fact that people love their neighborhood so much as a benefit. I'm like, let's get totes with their zip codes on it. Let's get shirts with their zip codes on it. People love
Right.
their neighborhood. They love repping the 15208. They love repping the, 15212s of the areas. And so can identity make it easier or harder? Because as I also said, Hazelwood has their own plan. Homewood has
Right.
their own plan. The Hill District has their own plan. Larmer has their own beautiful plan, right? So does it make it easier? Does it make it harder? What do you think?
That's such a good question because it's such a part of Pittsburgh to rep your neighborhood. I actually don't think I have an answer to that, but what I will say is I think there is opportunity there. And I think, I lived in New York for a little while, and I lived all over New York because the rent was always too damn
New York
high.
is great, man.
I loved it. Listen, I always say when I get old and these kids get out my face, if they ever do, I will go back. I would absolutely go back because it's
Kids
always
never get
fun.
out your face.
Yeah,
That's
well, girl, stop. Why are you presenting me with alternative views? But if I ever get my life back, I would go back and go there. But that was one of the things that I loved about New York City was how self-contained the communities were. Like it didn't matter where I lived, there was a grocery store, there was a clothing store, there was a bodega, there was a fruit market. Like I didn't have to. If I didn't want to leave when I lived in Bushwick, if I didn't want to leave Bushwick, I didn't have to leave Bushwick. I just want to be out for the rest of my life. And so I love that. But I also love the idea that this is New York City. Like if I want to leave my neighborhood, I could go 2 neighborhoods over and get the exact same thing. Right. And the people are different and the energy is different and it's just a whole vibe. So I think that oftentimes in Pittsburgh, because we are so identity driven by our community, that we don't realize that is why people love Pittsburgh. Like literally, I can be anywhere and be like Pittsburgh, and people be like, "Go Steelers," or they be like, "I went there and I love it. It is a beautiful city." Now they ain't never lived here, so they don't know the day-to-day struggles like we do. But what I will say is, I don't think that Pittsburgh sometimes realizes is that is the beauty of the entire city in and of itself. That it still has like that neighborhood feel, right?
Yeah, and being from the Bronx, I just feel like Pittsburgh feels like one big stoop. Like I do want to go outside. I see who's on the block. When I do, people sometimes make fun of me because they're like, well, everywhere you go, you see somebody. I'm like, but why wouldn't you? That's what this city breeds. And so I do think that I think that when we try to cater to each community's identity, something gets lost there because we're using the same old algorithms of engagement, and we all know that engagement can't. If it works in Squirrel Hill, it doesn't mean it's going to work in Hill. Doesn't mean it's going to work in Southside. Doesn't mean it's going to work in these other places. And so I think sometimes in trying to engage in people's identity that way can be harmful. But I think there's an opportunity to engage these cities' identity, these neighborhood identities, by just allowing them to flourish. So give them the central business district, give them the resources to maintain their parks, make sure they have the resources to maintain their schools. If they don't have to leave their neighborhood to go get something like groceries, then they shouldn't have to. Right. They shouldn't have to. One of the reasons why I fell in love with Homewood recently is because they have a coffee shop there. I go and sit in a coffee shop all day in Homewood and learn so much about that neighborhood and see people and meet people. And so I do think that there's something to be said. There is an opportunity, and let's make sure that parts of this comprehensive plan leave space for people to reserve and preserve their identity and even flourish in it by their own standards. But they can't do that if y'all are closing all of their schools, if you're making supermarkets further away, if the resources are going out and not in, or you're not caring about how development works in and out of that neighborhood. Because let's be honest, like you know, there are a lot of people who stay in the neighborhoods that they were born in, and they love
Mm-hmm.
it. They've been there. It was their parents' house, then it was their house, then there's their kids'
And they
house,
ain't going nowhere.
and they don't plan on going anywhere. But imagine the trauma of, yeah, that used to be a park, then it was a building, then it was a laundromat. There's trauma in not being able to associate with where you live because everyone has free reign to it. So how do we also preserve and reserve the priorities of development for the people in that neighborhood so they can also maintain the integrity of that identity?
Right.
And so I don't think this is going to be an inclusive plan. We just make Pittsburgh look like one thing. I think it should strengthen the multiple things we have going on under this auspice of we are affordable. We want you to come here. We're moving forward. We're environmental advocates. And so to me, this plan should shield and like hold and cover the things that we feel to be true and dear to our hearts, especially in 90 neighborhoods.
Right.
90. New York has 5 boroughs. Now, granted, those boroughs are large, but it's still only got 5. We have
Right.
90 neighborhoods in a city that's smaller than the borough of Brooklyn.
Exactly.
So there is some catering and TLC. And I do think you're right that identity could be a true opportunity here. And I'm curious what unique perspectives we bring to planning because of our lived experiences. And so I love going to Manchester.
Mm-hmm.
They are very serious about who they are and
Yes.
what they mean to the city. And I also,
Sometimes in a scary way.
in a scary way, but the city also has to recognize what they made Manchester to be.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because there's been some serious harm done in Manchester.
Do you see what they had to? I think they fortified themselves and was like, okay, this is who we are.
Mm-hmm.
So what unique perspectives do we bring to planning because of our lived experiences, do you think?
Absolutely. So, I spent most of my childhood in Wilkinsburg and the Hill District. I was in Wilkinsburg until middle school, and then we moved to the Hill District. And then I lived in the Hill District. But I think, there's just so much of me there was so much of me and my perspective that was formed by just growing up in the Hill District as a historical place. Like the value that I carry for history now is completely built on growing up in the Hill District and being able to literally discover different parts of American history on every single corner. When I was a young adult, I actually participated in a documentary about the Jazz Age in the Hill District, and it completely changed my perspective. And so I think, the Hill brings a lot of history. It brings a lot of creativity. It brings a lot of just, the Hill has always been blackety black, black, black for real, for real. That was my perspective growing up. And so I think every part of the city of Pittsburgh, every neighborhood has its own just what's the word essence. It's like an essence that it's bringing to not only the planning table, but just the table of what it means to be Pittsburgh in and of itself. And I think you are 100% right. Like when we don't, what we don't want to do is ask people to come to the table of Pittsburgh planning, with an overarching idea. We want them to bring the nuance of not only their own lives, but the nuance of their perspective to it. And I do want to make a point, because when you were talking, what I thought about was, as folks are coming, to different community engagement events, which we're going to be having more community engagement events in October. So look out for that. I think it's really important to understand that you are developing a roadmap for leadership. And this is something that coming to the table, whether you are a resident of Elliott or a resident of, Homewood or a resident of whatever, there's too many neighborhoods name off, but you are not only bringing your perspective, being from that community or being a part of that community, but you are also bringing like an ability to say to leadership, this is what I want, and these are the parameters that I want you to align yourself with moving forward. So this is the strength of having a comprehensive plan in place. And especially a comprehensive plan that has been community guided, right? Because this isn't a plan that like 5 people just sat in a room and was like, this is what we want. This is a plan where everybody across the city of Pittsburgh, residents, whether you're a resident, a small business owner, person in education, whatever, person in environmental justice, has an opportunity to invest their time, invest their perspective into this plan, and then be able to hold people's feet to the fire, whether that be the person that is that represents you on city council, or the mayor, or even your school board, representative. Like, this is an opportunity for us to not just be like, oh, now we have a comprehensive plan for 25 years. You can pull this plan out.
Right.
And be like, I'm at the school board meeting and this is what the comprehensive plan says. These are the goals that we're supposed to be focused on in Elliott, in Homewood, in the Hill District, in whatever neighborhood, the 50,000 neighborhoods on the north side is. So we have to start looking at this process as not just like, oh, because I know some of the things I've heard being out in the community is like, oh, they're going to do what they want to do anyway. That's because we won't show up. Yeah, they are. You're right. You are, if you think it and that's what you live, you are 100% right. Because if you are not there to hold people's feet to the fire and hold people's feet to the fire with a document that says, this is what we said, you're doing the opposite of what we said, then you're right. They are going to do what they want to do. But we, as the 90 neighborhoods in the city of Pittsburgh, have an opportunity here to be able to say, this is what we said. Like Nene said, I said what I said. Are you doing what I said, or are you doing what you
want to do?
Yes. And having a clear delineation between the two. So, in addition to identity, this is also about leadership and about our ability to strengthen our leadership and our ability to, what's the word I want to use? Our ability to hold leadership's feet to the fire with what we said.
I think that's beautiful. And I'm also, I think as you're saying all of this, it's making me think about all the people we have to work with. We don't just have a community engagement team. We have a technical team. We have the city. We have partners, right? And so what is it like to collaborate with so many perspectives at the table? And I think for me, the largest learning curve has been learning what the city does and what the city doesn't do. Like, I don't know if I got that in civics. I don't know if I even took civics. I don't even know if a lot of us know how the city is supposed to be helping us thrive as citizens. And so having to navigate those perspectives, or having to navigate even what our role is in this project, which is to just bring people to the seats. I think there's more than that. I think we have to, the perspective shift that I've recognized is not just bring people to the seats. We have to acknowledge that they've been to the seat before. We have to acknowledge that they've sat in these seats before.
Mm-hmm.
We have to acknowledge that we've ran them out of these seats before.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are going to be some people we just got to bring and who are happy to be here. I think there are other people that we're going to have some serious vulnerable conversations around what collaboration looks like, what it means to have so many perspectives. But I also think how the city can be a good partner to us with their own parameters and their own restrictions and their own things. And so there have been a lot of perspectives. And I think even my perspective, I never viewed community engagement as a checkbox, but I think my perspective has shifted a little bit more in like, wow, we really need to be grounded in grass tops and grassroots work. Or else I think we can get so far away from what the truth is.
Right. And I think it's hard work though. Like
yeah. Talking to you is hard work. And then saying, how am I going to use this data and turn this data into whatever the bottom line is? But this is good data. This is warm data.
Right.
But I do think it takes time. It's different than me just saying, hey, go fill out this survey.
Right.
Which I do think we need y'all to fill out. Mm-hmm. And I think that this is important,
I agree. And I think it's like you said, I think this is the first time that I've ever realized, well, let me not say realize, because I think I've always realized the complexity and the bureaucracy of politics. I think growing up in the United States, you don't have kind of have a choice, but to
Right.
understand that there are boxes that you have to check, there are people that do a certain thing and don't do a certain thing. But I think that this whole process has opened my eyes to how, I'm trying to find the right word to use that is politically correct, but how, so I'm going to say this on a broader level. People in today's society are generally ill equipped to deal with other people.
Mm.
I think from the pandemic to the onslaught of technology to, different, even the discovery of mental health issues, not discovery, but the opening of mental health and how many people have utilized it as a way to silo themselves from people. I think our society on a whole is really dealing with a crisis in terms of social trust. And
Mm.
so, even being out in the community and hearing how much people do not trust politics and are afraid to engage in those ways, and me being one of those people myself, somebody who not necessarily, it's not that I don't trust politics, but I'm definitely a person that's like skittish when it
Mm.
comes to politics, because it's like, what are you going to do with this information? How are you going to use it? Is it going to come back on me in negatively in some type of way? And I think it has a lot to do with the eroding social trust in the United States. And so, like you said, it's really important that we have these grassroots efforts in terms of really understanding what people need, how people need to understand information in order for them and us to best utilize it for their betterment. But grassroots means really building a life around a people first mentality that oftentimes does not exist, not only in local government, but in communities themselves, right?
Mm.
America is so individually based that oftentimes we're just like, what works for me and the people closest to me.
Mm.
And when we're talking about something as big as a comprehensive planning process, it's like you really got to be people first.
Yeah.
Like you really do. You've got to think people first.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I always thought about planning, that as long as I've been in community engagement, is we'll descend on a neighborhood and we're like, oh my God, neighborhood, you need something. And that neighborhood would say, yeah, we do. But I also need these things before I can think about what the neighborhood needs, right?
Right.
And so I do think that we skip some
Steps.
pieces before we can assess. We don't even assess people's capacity to care about a thing first. And so it's important to have these things. I know that I'm a chair of a board and I'm on a couple boards, but when I run meetings, the first thing I ask someone is how they're doing, because I'm like, before we get to business, let me just even assess your capacity to be here. That way I can move forward. This meeting don't need to be long. This meeting could be short,
Mm-hmm.
cancel, because we need to read the room. And I hope that this comprehensive plan helps Pittsburgh and leaders and officials read the room.
Right. That part.
And I think it's time to read the room. The nation ain't reading the room. And so we need to read the room, right? We have debunked this idea that Pittsburgh is the most affordable city for all people. We have
Mm-hmm.
debunked that it's the healthiest city for all people. We have debunked a lot of things that we so desperately want to be true.
Right.
So how can this plan help us hold leaders, officials, and anyone else who's in charge of making the city run, hold them accountable to this and hold them accountable to reading the room for the next 25 years?
Yeah.
That's how I
I
feel.
love that you said that.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And so as a wrap up, go ahead. You got to say something?
Mm-mm.
As a wrap up and a takeaway, I'm just, you work with some of the toughest population of people that I know, Black mothers and parents.
Yeah.
What keeps you going when the work gets tough?
Right now, I think at different stages, it's a different thing. Right now, what's keeping me going is thinking about the next generation of moms and really creating a plan for my organization for me to move to the side and shift power. And I think in many ways, that's what Pittsburgh needs, period, is to shift power, to share power and to shift power. Because our everybody says children are the future, but nobody wants to give them the future. Everybody wants to create all these parameters for when people are ready to make decisions and when people are ready to, take leadership and all those things instead of creating opportunities for people and specifically younger people to exercise their power and exercise their ability to make good decisions. And so that's what keeps me going. Even through this comprehensive planning process, I can say that has been probably one of the most joyous things that I've had an opportunity to do is to meet some young mothers um, who are really dedicated to community and figuring out how I can use what I've built up, in the last 12 years of running Brown Mamas to help and support them and being a part of 2050, Pittsburgh 2050. And not just being a part of it as in living, in Pittsburgh, but being a part of decision-making processes. And so that's what's giving me hope. What about you, sis? Through this whole process, what is giving you any joy?
I think that I've just been enjoying learning. Like it hasn't been, I think it's a challenge for me too, you know, from like logistics, like invoicing and reporting and making things, which I know I'm falling short on the behind the scenes stuff, but then the front of the scenes stuff, it's reconnecting with my network, getting pushback from my network, right? Saying we don't trust it, but the candor and the vulnerability of building with my network around this process has been fulfilling because it's grounding me again in like, okay, this is why I started doing this. This is why I find myself in certain spaces because I care about this very much. And there are these people who also care about it, but we're having a problem finding the collaboration point. And I love collaboration. Like, I don't think we're going to get anywhere alone.
Right.
And I think we have to do things together. And so I think this is a great place to collaborate where a lot of marginalized communities in Pittsburgh have the same plights. They might be identity specific, but they're similar plights. And so I want to see the city get to this collaborative point where they can support the nuances of all these 90 neighborhoods, which is so beautiful to watch. I love one of the reasons why I got into this work is when I was a senior at Pitt, I moved to Greenfield. Greenfield might be this big, but guess what it has? It has a supermarket, it has restaurants, it has a central business district, and it's snuggled between really awesome neighborhoods. And when I got my car, I went right down the street to Hazelwood, about a mile, not even a mile. And the large differences really caught me by surprise. And so I don't want to be that surprised when I go from neighborhood to neighborhood.
Right.
And I do think that requires some good paying attention, good honing in on those communities and letting them get the resources they need to thrive on their own, which it's possible. And that's another thing that keeps me going is I know this is possible.
Right.
So let's just get back to possibility. Let's get back to opportunity. Let's read the room. Let's hold people accountable. Let's hijack the plan. And that's our call to action for y'all. And as you're watching these, send us questions. If you have that we can answer, leave it in the LinkedIn comments, leave it in the YouTube comments. We will answer any questions. Ask us to keep it real. That was part of this to keep it real, to let y'all know is Muffy and I have struggled during this process.
It's not been easy.
We've had to challenge ourselves. And so if we had to do that, we can only imagine what it is for y'all on the outside trying to engage in this process. So hit us up, let us know. We'll be here every Tuesday at 12 with the purpose. Muffy, as always, you inspire me to keep it going. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Alyssa. Thank you for keeping us grounded. And it's been a joy to be alongside you in this process, knowing you're